Hi there, folks. So for this week, we'll be looking at drag representation on screen. So thinking about first film and then on television. And we're doing this to kind of lead us up to about 2009 and to set us up to talk about RuPaul's Drag Race and kind of the last 10, 12 years and how that representation has changed. But first, we need to take a look at a longer history of drag or more broadly LGBTQ representation on film and television. So, I Am Divine, which you see in the title here, is referring specifically to Divine, the drag queen, who you'll see quite a few times throughout this presentation, who was the famous muse of filmmaker John Waters. But you might remember back to week 3 when we looked at the Pascal Guettet article that spoke about camp and this particular drag queen named Divine in Jean Genet's Our Lady of the Flowers, which was first published in 1943. So we see this kind of building on this larger history of drag representation, taking from this camp reference from much earlier on in Paris, and then looking at how camp has been then developed within certain streams of queer cinema. So for today, I'll be doing a kind of a brief introduction to LGBTQ and drag representation in film. And we'll be watching the film The Celluloid Closet from 1995. So it's about an hour and 40 minutes. And as long as you can get through as much as you can before Friday, and but just make sure that you watch it before the end of the class when we wrap up, because there will be a question about the celluloid closet on the exam. And so this film gives a broad overview of gay and lesbian people mostly, but also gender nonconforming folks in film and television, kind of all the way back to the pansy craze, which we looked at earlier in the class. So the pansy craze of the 1930s, and takes us through this history of censoring particular representations of sexuality, which started with the Hays Code in the US. And basically, this code banned all representations of what it called deviant sexuality. So it included a wide range of characters. But in the film, it'll show us how um, producers, filmmakers, and actors at times were able to subvert those explicit rules and present queer characters in different ways. But then, of course, we also see the development of very problematic representations of queer people. So, this idea of the villain, of someone who is sick or morally corrupt. And this will kind of give us a sense of the direction that queer film, queer cinema has come between like the early 1930s all the way up to about the mid 90s, when we start to see very positive representations of gay and lesbian and even sometimes trans people. But as we know, that has a different history as well in terms of um, representation of trans people, which we're seeing more and more now or in the past 10 years. And then on Friday, we'll go over the 3 readings for the course, and I'll give kind of a background to queer theory and film studies. So feminist film studies has its own particular intellectual history, and the article on Disgust, which talks about pink flamingos, uses a kind of psychoanalytic language that is very prominent in feminist film studies and queer theory. And then for next week, so on Friday, I will touch base with you about group discussions and set you up for the next 3 weeks. We will be doing group discussions for week 10, 11, and 12 for the additional readings for group 1 to 4. So we'll be able to have a conversation about that on Friday.